Welcome to the Secondary Take. I'm Graham Bunn. Got my better half, Mr. Zach Talitsky, on. If you guys are new to the show, welcome. Doing a little update. It is the off season, but I feel like college basketball now with the NIL and the portal, there's no such thing as the off season. So welcome to the show. Like and subscribe if you guys do enjoy Carolina basketball content. We do a review show, essentially just kind of recapping everything Carolina basketball. Man, portal season has kind of been kind to us. I read an article the other day. It said our grade would be incomplete. Now, we do get probably the preseason National Player of the Year back for another year. We get an amazing addition, I guess, out of the portal in Seth Trimble, who's familiar with the program, adds a lot of depth. Our backcourt and wing play is going to be second to none. But then, obviously, what you and I are going to get on here and describe is very challenging to understand what we're missing as far as being a landing spot for a talented big. How you doing? Talk me off the ledge here because it's a big piece,
Yeah, it's hard to know what's missing. I mean, there's so many big name centers that hit the portal right away. With Ballo and both the guys from Kentucky and I do, and a lot of them, it seemed like we had a bit of an angle on. And then it was strange how it all went down because, in several cases, with Ballo going to Indiana and then committing, I think, during his visit and did not take, multiple visits. I think the same sort of thing happened with Bradshaw going to Ohio State. And so, I don't have any insider knowledge, but it sure seems like what's happening is, the collectives are coming together and they're putting a big money offer on the table. And I'm assuming there's some pressure involved to take it, because if you leave and go spend a couple additional weeks going to other schools, obviously there's some risk that money goes away and goes to somebody else. So that's the only thing. I mean, these guys have been through, recruiting before. They were all big name recruits. So I can't believe they just showed up on campus so overwhelmed by a visit without the money aspect that they're going to make that type of commitment. Particularly when, a lot of these guys are trying to position themselves for the draft and they still have a lot to show. Especially those two big Kentucky centers. I mean, they probably thought they're going to be one and dones.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard for me to wrap my head around is because of what we have to offer. Nothing against any of those other programs. But you're stepping in to Baycott's role, in an offense that, as great as RJ is and as much as we let him cook, I mean, ultimately we want to throw the ball into the post and initiate a lot of offense that way. And so I'm just shocked someone hasn't jumped at that opening and that opportunity, particularly with the guard pieces that we could surround that player with. I mean, they're not going to see a ton of double teams. So I don't know. I'm at a loss. I mean, I've been at a loss for several weeks. So I don't know.
So what are we now? We're roughly 0 for 4. Now, we didn't get the visit from Ballo. Like you said, you mentioned it goes to IU, but Wolf was on campus. Cliff from Rutgers was on campus, ends up going to Bama. Adu from Tennessee, he didn't schedule a visit, did he? Or was he on campus? Because I think he signs at Arkansas. So we're missing out on a ton. How much do you think Washington's role in the offense, where people might say, well, I don't want to compete for a starting 5 there. He's been there for 2 years. He knows the system. He's their 5. Do you think that factors in at all? Because if I'm Washington, I'm really paying attention to all the guys we're bringing in and thinking, okay, well, what's the plan for me?
I don't think people are scared off by him. I just don't think he's shown enough so far that guys of the caliber that we're discussing would say, hey, I'm afraid to go in and compete with that guy. I'm sure he's going to get 35 minutes a game.
Right.
And it's not like they're going to schools where, I mean, I don't know, maybe Indiana's thin, and so Ballo knows he's going to get all those minutes. Ohio State, I don't think has a big guy. So maybe in those cases it's clearer and there's less of a number 2, but I just wonder how aggressive we are in, just trying to throw money at people. My guess is that Hubert is really trying to prioritize fit. He's probably trying to take his time. and he really wants to make sure that the team chemistry is great, because last year it was, the year before it wasn't. And so my guess is he's trying to play it a little bit more slowly and thoughtfully, and less just about, hey, let's pull together the highest bid and get this guy in because he's talented.
Sure.
And I don't know, maybe that approach doesn't play well in the portal. But hopefully the patience will pay off for us, and we'll end up getting, the right person and the right piece. I know the guy Lubin from Vandy, who started at Notre Dame, I think, is supposed to come in on Tuesday of this week.
Right.
So, hopefully we'll end up getting the right player for this team. But it is disappointing and a bit of a head scratcher that we haven't already landed that 5. We obviously did get the shooter we needed, hopefully, in Tyson.
Yeah. Shout out Cade Tyson. Looking forward to seeing him play. And he's 6'7", so I mean, he's maybe 3'4". I know we're in the mix with Coleman Hawkins if he comes out of the draft. That's another thing that's, there's going to be some players that come back to college. Now, I don't know what the rules are. Like, how long the portal's open? Can they sign as late as whenever? Do they have to go back to their own school if So, I mean, I think we're still in the mix with Harrison Ingram. I think we're still in the mix with the Kentucky kid that's testing the draft process on Yen. So there's a kid I watched a lot of from Arkansas, and Arkansas is really filling out their roster too. So I don't know if he comes back to Arkansas, but excuse me if I mispronounce his last name, Brazil.
Yeah.
He's like a 6'10", 6'11" guy that stretched 5, athletic and very talented. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't stay in the draft, but he's another guy that we could be in the mix for. So there are players there. You just don't know until May 29th or June 1st when that deadline is. Okay, here are the guys that are still available, and here are the guys that are not.
Yeah, and I'm confident we're going to get somebody. The question is, will it be, a needle mover that we would need to win a championship? Because I think, that's really what we're talking about here, is the type of player that can have, that type of impact. And I do think it's hard. I mean, you mentioned Washington. I think Washington, if we end up not bringing in a 5, I think has a chance to be great and be a contributor. And it takes us back to the way things used to be, is you paid your dues and you sat around in a program and got some minutes and developed. And then when it's your time, you got to put in the work over the summer and come in and be aggressive and be a leader and be ready to shine. And so if it ends up coming down to that, I won't be disappointed, just because, hey, he's been loyal to the program, without getting a ton of minutes. He's fought his way through a couple of injuries, and he's obviously a very skilled guy.
My only concern would be defensively. And maybe who knows what he's going to do in the offseason. I think they're going to prioritize, hey, look, now he's going to have to play a ton of 5, whereas before maybe he splits 4 or 5. I don't see him being able to have the luxury of splitting unless we get another 5 that has some thickness or has some weight to him. So I think he's predominantly locked in at the 5 spot right now. But like you said, incredibly gifted offensively. I do worry about his ability to move his feet. I think Baycott was an incredibly underrated defender, especially the ball screen up top. Jalen seemed to at times struggle with that. So I'm hopeful that we get another option there, even if, it just gives us foul trouble insurance. It gives us, hey, guys, just didn't bring it tonight. He's got exams on his mind. He's having an off day, and we just have options off the bench. I think that would be great. I think we have 3 spots left to fill.
Yeah, we have 3 scholarships.
3 scholarships. And I mean, I would love the Coleman Hawkins kid. I got to watch a lot of him at Illinois. Unfortunately, he had to play 5 at Illinois. He won't have to play 5 for us. I mean, maybe he, smaller matchups, he'll play a little bit of 5 if required, but I think he's a great stretch 4. And if Harrison doesn't come back, I think that's a really good option. Doesn't rebound as well as Harrison, not as strong as Harrison, but he's 6'10".
Yeah.
Like that length and that mobility on the wing in Carolina's fast-paced offense, I think behooves us as a program and him as a player.
Yeah, wasn't like 150 people declared for the draft or something like that? And I mean, maybe 30 Americans will end up getting drafted.
Yeah. I mean, last I looked, Harrison was like 45th on the board out of 60. So I don't know. I don't know what his thought process is. I try to do some undercover where I hit somebody that is involved with the NBA draft and is very close in relationship with a few NBA executives to find out Harrison Ingram's draft status or what the. He was like, well, anything can change with the process, and the process is just starting this week. But that he goes, I would be shocked if he didn't come back to college after the process. So, I hate that for Harrison. I want whatever's best for him, and hopefully that's coming back to school and he sacrifices one more year for his dream, and then he's 15 to 20 next year in the draft. But the initial reports was, I don't have anything concrete, but I'd be shocked if he doesn't come back to school.
I mean, yeah, I hope he crushes it during the combine and during his one-on-one workouts. But if he doesn't, man, he'd be great to have back next year.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely helps on the boards. I'm just worried about defensively and his ability to defend basically in college 1 through 5. I mean, you don't want him on their point guard, and you don't want him on their center. But he can put a little bit of pushback to those positions, and he's great 2, 3, 4. So who knows what's going to happen? But it's just missing out on these bigs, especially with the success that Bacot had. I guess he had success on the college level, and maybe people are looking at his draft stock, but I don't think that's fair because he had every opportunity, he had every minute under the sun to improve his draft stock, and I felt like if I was a big and I wanted to be on display, Carolina's a great place to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to come up with what I thought the lineups would be, and we talked about this last time, but it's evolved a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, I think pretty clear Elliott and RJ at 1 and 2. And then I don't know, is it Jackson or Tyson at 3?
I think that they compete. I think it's like the quarterback and they go into camp. I think that is up for debate. Whoever takes to plays well with compliments.
And Powell has to be in the mix too, competing for that 3.
Yeah. I think he would be the third man in that. Right now, I'm looking at it as 1, 2 is a toss up between Ian and Cade, and then I think Powell would be the third option there.
Yeah. And then 4, if Harrison comes back, clearly he has that. If not, do you think Cade can play 4 for us?
See, I think
that's a big open question, right? Because that really changes. And I don't know if Powell can play 4.
Yeah. Is Powell 6'6" and Cade 6'7"? Is that
6'6", 6'7"? Yeah.
Yeah, we get thin because we also don't have a fixed center. So that's going to be tough. Obviously, we're going to have to get up and down, and I think we want to get up and down. But we're losing all of our rebounding with Harrison and Bacot. So we have work to do. Now the Lubin kid seems like he's got some body on him. I mean, he's a little undersized. I think he's 6'8". Is that right?
He's 6'8", but he played small ball center for Vandy, so he's used to playing in the post. I don't know that Tyson or Drake Powell spent a lot of time playing in the post. Certainly not in the ACC. So I think he's got 2 years of high major ball under his wing. So I think he could step in. And then you do have Withers potentially as a 4.
Yeah, as of right now, I would imagine Withers is going to be sort of like Seth was last year, where Seth was 1 or 2. Like he came in and he subbed and he played both positions. I think Withers will be 3 or 4, like wherever we need him. Not to knock him, because I like Withers. I love that he's back. I didn't know that was a thing, but the announcement came, hey, I'm coming back to school. I think that's amazing. I don't believe he's a starter for Carolina, though, if it's not out of necessity. Like, I think that they're bringing other players in hopes that he will be that guy to come off the bench and give us spark minutes and just be a very vital tool to a championship team. I don't know if we can get it done for a national title with Withers as our starting 4. And I know that sounds terrible coming from somebody that's a big part of the fan base. You should believe in your kids. And I do. I just believe that for us to maximize the roster that we have, I would hope that he would be an auxiliary piece and not like the main dish.
Yeah, and I mean, it was such a huge luxury having him come off the bench last year, and so he thrived in that role, and so it wouldn't be bad if he did that again. But and then I think Washington, unless we bring in a portal 5,
Mm-hmm.
But then you start going to the bench. So you got Trimble, who can play 1 or 2. So we've got a lot of flexibility there because I think he can play either of those spots.
Correct.
You've got Powell, who I think can play 2 or 3. And so I think you've got some flexibility with him in either of those spots. Withers, who's probably better at 4, but could probably play a little 3 off the bench. And then you got High and then someone like Lubin, who both are probably like 4-5s. So you've got some swing guys, I think, off the bench. The issue potentially is shooting. And that's why, I think we're going to have to play, a fair number of minutes where those bench guys are on the floor with either RJ, or Tyson. I think that it's going to be key to make sure we balance some of those guys with shooters.
Yeah, agreed. And then hopefully Elliott is really, locked in on his jump shot. That became a major storyline. So I don't think anybody would be shocked that it'd be probably the focal point of his offseason is becoming a threat behind the 3-point line. So hopefully he comes back and he's taking a large step forward in being a consistent 3-point shooter, because I do believe they're going to play off of him. I mean, if they have to press up on Elliott, then I think we're going to be just fine. That plays into his strength. Oh, I get to drive and find guys and create off the bounce. Like we're going to be in good shape. So I think a lot of it has to do with how much work he puts in and how quickly that jump shot develops into a significant threat, on a Power 5 level.
It's going to be interesting to see how Hubert finds the right lineups next year. I mean, it's always interesting, but I think the combinations that he could throw out there with this group, and I know it's not complete yet, but it isn't like a clear and obvious starting 5 where the roles are just really well defined.
Right.
And it feels like this is a team that's going to be overweighted with guards and wings and maybe underweighted with bigs. And so, what do we do with that? And then how do we change our system and our style to fit the strengths of the team? I mean, what would you do? I mean, stylistically, with what we know about the team coming in for next year, is there anything you do differently to optimize for that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, just looking at the roster how it is and thinking who knows what we'll add if guys end up leaving the NBA draft and becoming available to sign. But as it's currently constructed, I would go to Cade Tyson and say, hey, look, we're going to need you to add some muscle. Obviously, we don't want to sacrifice your jump shot, because sometimes when you start to add in weight, it changes your body a little bit. You don't get as much lift on your shot. Sometimes your shot flattens out because your legs are always tired. That's challenging, but it's not like he's a freshman. So hopefully he's been in a college weight program, and, you just change that approach a little bit if you're trying to bulk and say, we might have to use you at 4 at some point in time, because I think Ian is a 3-level scorer. So if we played those two together, Ian, RJ, and Elliott all can create off the bounce. So offensively, I think we're going to be just fine. And then we're going to have to gang rebound. And it might sacrifice our secondary break a little bit, because last year we could just let Harrison and Baycott eat the glass by themselves and 3 guys get out, and so I think for me, we might have to go a little bit of small ball, but defensively, hey, everybody's got a gang rebound. Nobody leaks out. Everybody's hitting the boards. Everyone's going to hit the glass. We got to do it by committee. We've had a luxury over the last few years with guys that could just take care of it themselves and go get it. We don't have that now, but you're never going to have everything. There's always going to be something that you have to game plan for, augment, change. So for me, because I think shooting and scoring is a premium, and I think the game is geared towards teams that can score. They put the defense at a disadvantage. All right, well, let's play into it. Let's play all our scores and figure it out. I mean, even Washington's a stretch 5, and if he's not looking over his shoulder, who knows? Maybe he opens up a little bit, starts making shots that we're like, oh, wow, where'd this come from? Well, it comes from knowing that he ain't going to the bench,
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it last year during the season. There were some games where it felt like he was aggressive and looking for a shot. And I mean, he always played way better, in those games. And for whatever reason, other games, he just looked very passive. And he'd get 4 or 5 minutes and get subbed out. And you look up and it was no points, no rebounds. but yeah, next year he'll know he's all summer. He's going to be the man, and he's going to get 30 minutes. And I mean, if that doesn't fire you up to put in the work over the summer, I don't know what would. I mean, I'm not sure that our best offense is him down on the post. I mean, I could imagine, we do some stuff almost like Connecticut ran this year, where Klingon, I felt like, was up high a lot out of the post.
Yeah.
And they would sort of run a lot of actions off of him where he could sort of screen guys, and then you get a lot of sort of curl actions around him so you can get some open drives to the basket. And that's not to say he would never like duck in. I know they throw it into him from time to time, but with Washington, if you put him in the high pick and roll and they go into a drop coverage with their big, he should just be able to step out and rain threes, a ton. So I could see us playing him out, either at the elbow or top of the key, running some offense through him with some guards coming off of for high screens, and then have a bunch of driving lanes for Elliott, bunch of driving lanes for Ian and RJ. But I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. I do think for the team as it's made up today, we're just not going to be able to roll out, hey, this is the Carolina system.
Oh,
we've got more talent than you. We're just gonna grind you in a pulp. I feel like this is going to require more creativity than maybe some other years.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Carolina usually hangs its hat on, now I get whatever 3 years into the Hubert Davis era, is two bigs eating the glass and being strong down low. Now it's a new era in Carolina basketball, but this year more so than any, because Baycott, this will be the first year Hubert Davis is the head coach without Armando. I just feel like we have a different task, because I don't think our backcourt's ever been deeper. I mean, we are really deep in the backcourt. Our guards, you could argue, it's the best backcourt in America, with one of the best 6 men in America in Trimble, in my opinion. And I think he's only going to get better. He took a gigantic step forward from his freshman year to his sophomore year. I would imagine, especially since he wanted to go somewhere and have a larger role, that he's not going to just rest on his laurels. He's going to keep working hard. He's going to be an even better player this year. So, and then with Ian, the ceiling is very high. His talent level is, the projection on this kid is higher than we've had in a very long time for a recruit coming in. So I just think our challenge is finding out how we're going to figure out the defensive end and rebounding. And that's very, very important. Hopefully we get a piece, and maybe the Ianyenso kid from Kentucky, who he might fall out of the draft and back to us. Who knows? But as of right now, I still think we could be a really good team, but it is going to be, a lot of it's going to fall on Hubert and the staff of figuring out the pieces and how to construct, like, all right, well, how do we hide this deficiency? Because that is going to be a glaringly obvious thing that most teams will attack.
Yeah, I mean, we already had it a little bit with Elliott and RJ in the backcourt this year, so that comes back as a bit of a deficiency. And then we're trying to break in two freshmen who I think both have great defensive potential based on their length and athleticism, but it's still different defending in high school than it is in college. Not only the size and strength of the athletes, but just getting used to the system. So I think the pieces are there for this to be a great defensive team, particularly on the perimeter. But it's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for us, and I do think that we'll get somebody that's coming back. I hope Coleman Hawkins is one of those. I'm not sure about the Lubin kid. I tried to watch a couple highlights. The videos that I saw, nothing jumped off the page. Like, oh yeah, he's a game changer. He's going to change I thought the Cliff kid from Rutgers would have been a game changer for what he brought to the table and what needs we have as a program. But you never know. And again, credit to the staff for what they've been able to do last year with having a terrible year, missing the NCAA tournament, and then turning it all the way around and being a 1 seed. So I do have faith that they'll take a look at the roster, take a look at their strengths, and then figure out the best product to put on the floor. But as a fan, like you said, it'd be nice to have, we got this kid in the portal, this big in the portal, and we're good, him or Washington. We're good either or that starts. I don't know if we get that.
Right. Yeah. A Ballo or someone like that, where you know what you're getting. And Yeah, I mean, I think Lubin. I watched a little highlights as well. I had a similar reaction. I mean, seemed good, but sort of felt more like a rotation player than a star.
Sure.
But 6'8" could probably play both 4-5. I know he made some threes. I know you had a couple big double doubles as they closed out their season. So and my guess is we've got a good read on him between the Stackhouse connection and the fact that he played at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And with Cormac. So I'd assume the staff knows he's a good guy and would be a good cultural fit.
Now, if Harrison comes back, I think that we're cooking with gasoline.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to.
I mean,
figure out the 5.
I don't think he's coming back, only because I just feel like this is the year that his stock probably is going to be a little bit better than it will be next year. It seems like everyone's projecting next year's draft to be one of the best in the last decade. So maybe timing hurts us here. But if he does come back, and the way that he rebounds the ball and what he's able to give us offensively and defensively, I think that we have every opportunity to compete for a national title. Get number 7, baby. It's
awesome.
the year of 7. It's the year of 7. I'm calling it, man. I'm calling it.
I tell you, the landscape of college basketball right now is just absolutely insane, right? I mean, you had like a program like Arkansas where their coach leaves, and I think they were down to like one player when Calipari showed up.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you can basically steal your entire team and the incoming freshman, from Kentucky, and that's all legal is very strange. It's like it's a conference rival, and they got Big Z, right? They got I think Thiero committed there from Kentucky. And then I think Carter Knox, Boogie Fland, Billy Richmond were all recruits at Kentucky, and they all came. And they added in Adu and Janelle Davis from Florida Atlantic. I mean,
yeah, they're loaded.
They're loaded. I mean, they went from having one player to being loaded in like a month.
Loaded.
And just and I haven't really pulled together who Kentucky has, but like they lost all of those guys who are going pro, who ended up in Arkansas. Some of them transferred to other places, but then I think they've recovered fairly well and brought in their own guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's still Kentucky. That's a great selling point for sure. If you had to, 2 things. The Broom kid from Auburn, he can come back, correct?
Yeah. You mean from the draft?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you get a free look at the draft. So, you can declare, and then if it doesn't turn out how you want, you can come back and it doesn't impact your eligibility.
Oh, no, I meant like, was he eligible? I didn't know if his eligibility was gone. He's a guy that has a COVID year that he can come back?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I wonder if he I guess he would probably stay just because he'll probably be a first-team All-American there at Auburn. The Brazil kid, if he was going to put himself in the portal, that would be amazing to pick up that piece. But if you had a wish list to fill those 3 spots, could you give me two people that you'd love to lock in if you had a wish list?
I mean,
obviously Harrison.
I'm about to say, can I take Harrison?
Yeah, you can take Harrison. That's why I said 2, because I figured it would be 1.
Yeah, I mean, I like Coleman Hawkins too. I think he would fit our offense and fit what we like to do. Yeah, he's used to playing center for Illinois, and so I think he would be an interesting one.
I mean, he's 6'10".
Yeah. I mean, I thought the Baba Miller kid was interesting out of Florida State, but I haven't heard us connected to him at all.
No. I mean, the Watkins kid, he's undersized, but he's in the NBA draft process. He could come back, and he put his name, I believe he put his name in the portal. So if he comes back out of the draft, it's not a lock that he goes there. I think he's like, I had it somewhere around here. There's notes of all these kids' names everywhere. I think he's like 6'7". He might be 6'8". But again, undersized. There's not a lot of, I mean, Onyenso is 7 foot. And I think we have contacted him. We have contacted Hawkins. He's 6'10". Everybody else is 6'7", 6'8", at the tallest. So, there's just not a lot of really tall, lengthy guys left.
I would have loved to have had Norshad Omier from Miami. I would have loved to have had him.
Yeah. Baylor.
But yeah, Baylor got him.
Yeah, there's been some, I would have loved the kid from Yale. I thought that would have been so fun to cheer for him. Wolf.
Yeah, and Michigan. And Vlad Golden also went to Michigan. So it's a little bit, it's hard to see playing both of those guys together. I know that Wolf can spread the floor, but I feel like Wolf should have come to Carolina given how that played out on their roster.
Yeah, there's a kid out of New Mexico, JT Toppin. I think he's 6'9".
Yeah.
And if he stays in the draft, obviously we won't have a chance at him, but he might come back, and that's another name that I've heard floating around. So there are guys that we could pick up. It's just gonna be a long 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's going to play out, and I believe our patience will pay off. I'd love to have a really athletic, springy five that we can roll out there that can both defend the rim and stay in front on the ball screens. Just because if we have a defensive anchor like that, given I think the scoring we've got, and from guards and the wings this year, that's what really scares me the most about the roster as it's currently constructed is that, lacking that defensive anchor piece. And that's why the Cliff one hurt so bad, because I think he was that guy.
The same thing. I was thinking his skill set for me was, and I love Washington, but I felt like his skill set would have, all right, you're the starter, unless Washington just really wins out. And I would love if that happened, because that just means he's had an incredible offseason. But I felt like Cliff brought to the table something that would have completed the roster of like, okay, now we can really go compete with anybody in the nation.
And I don't want us to be desperate. I really don't want us to bring anybody in that we think is going to impact the chemistry negatively, because it's just so important. And also, I don't want to just bring somebody in when we've got our own guys who have committed to the program and been loyal and put in their time. And I've got no problem, with rolling with Washington and High and hopefully this James Brown kid coming in. Sometimes guys, even though they're high 3-star type of guys, they get into the program and get some coaching and take off. So unless the right person comes along, I think we can roll with what we have and compete.
All right. Well, it's nice to get back on here with you, man. If I had to say my two, I'd say give me Harrison back and give me the Onyenso kid, just because I feel like with his length, size, and athletic ability, he is the closest thing to what you just described. If I had two that I wanted out of the 3 spots we had left, and if I get a third, I'd take the Coleman Hawkins kid, but I don't think we're getting all 3 of those. But give me 2 of those and we'll be good.
If we get 2 of those, we're gonna be really good.
Yeah, that's probably a long shot, but if I had to. All right, well, I guess we'll jump back on here in about 3 weeks, man, and see where we stand.
Yeah, I guess once the draft plays out, we'll start getting some declarations of people coming back, and something tells me we're going to add another piece or 2.
Yeah, I wonder when is the latest that these guys can decide. So, obviously they have to make a decision on the draft by June 1st or the 29th. Then I wonder, does it have to be before the first day of school? You would think so, but I just don't know how that works. Like, how late can this off season last?
My guess is, and I don't know, I'm sure we could look it up, but my guess is that the dominoes will fall quickly after the draft.
After that. Because you would think most guys want to get in with their program and start playing with the guys and starting like, hey, I don't want to be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
We had a kid. This is a true story. We had a kid my freshman year, and he ended up being an NBA player. He was Mr. Basketball of Ohio, Mr. Keith McLeod. But I'd have to ask him. But I'm pretty sure he signed at Bowling Green, where I played, like after his sophomore year. Then he just blew up and became like this unreal all-world high school basketball player. And Cincinnati was on him tough. So we flunked out of high school to try to get out of the Bowling Green commitment, and our coach wasn't having it. And so I think had it gone to the courts, it would have been like a 2-year process to nullify that signing or whatever. So he showed up on campus December 14th, because it was like December 13th was the last day of the first semester. We played at Wisconsin Green Bay on December 14th. He showed up that morning for walkthrough. No one had ever met him. He'd never been on campus. He didn't take a visit. We'd already played half the season. And I actually started that night. He came off the bench with like 3 minutes into the game, got me. I knew the painting was on the wall. I was like, great. This kid never practiced. And we were playing at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. I mean, he definitely didn't know our names. Like, I'm sure when he met us, hey, how you doing? But he definitely didn't. He didn't know anybody's names. Went out there, had 14 points, but he like reported to school the morning that he played. It was the most craziest thing. Like, he showed up that morning for walkthrough. Like, everybody, this is your new teammate, Keith McLeod. Hey, Keith, how you doing, buddy? That night scores 14 and first man off the bench. Needless to say, I did not start the next game. I was not happy about it, but it is what it is. The guy ends up being, like an All-American and plays in the NBA. And but that was crazy to me. Shows up that morning, sixth man.
I mean, it's amazing the pressure on coaches now. I mean, to put together these teams and then find a way during the offseason to get everybody to gel and figure out the roles and get them to buy in to defense and what you're trying to do. And
I'm hiring a portal coach. I'm hiring a portal coach. There's a coach that's being added to the staff that is keeping an eye on who's not happy with us. Who are we going to have to re-recruit? Who are we going to have to replace? Like it just, like you said, it's a different job now. It's just a different job. You're the CEO of a major brand / company, and nothing is set in stone. Nothing.
Yeah, and just how you go about team building has to be different now because you just have so much less time.
Yeah.
And, I think all teams play better when they're fighting for one another and, they really care for one another and they're not just out there for themselves. It's not easy to do in these situations, particularly when you've got, 5-star McDonald's All-American freshmen who think they're one and done. You've got people who transferred into your program because they're trying to get featured, for the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I can't wait to see some early Arkansas games and see how all that plays out. But it's not just them. I mean, there's a bunch of programs. I don't know.
Yeah. Conversation for a different show, but Duke has added some
huge turnover for them.
Yeah, but they've also added, before, not that I wasn't worried, but of course, their recruiting class is unreal, as far as talent wise. But they've added a couple of veteran players out of the portal. The kid from Purdue is a really good player. I don't know much about the kid from Syracuse. I don't know much about the kid from Syracuse, but again, he's got college experience. And then I think there's a guard out of Tulane.
Yeah.
That I don't know much about, but again, they're adding experience to a class that is loaded, and I don't think they've always had experience. I mean, I guess Filipowski and Proctor this year, but
Roach,
Roach, Roach is at Baylor now. They're going to be tough. Baylor's going to be good.
Yeah, Baylor's going to be very good. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Duke will be fascinating to watch. Hopefully, it crashes and burns.
Hopefully it burns.
Hopefully it's a full-on disaster. And it could be. I mean, they're gonna have enough talent they'll be good, but it may not come together, just because you get all those big name recruits and then you try to mix in some portal guys. We obviously did a better job keeping our guys, right? Being able to keep Trimble, hopefully being able to keep Ingram, keeping RJ. Whereas they lost Roach, they lost Mark Mitchell. They lost a lot of these big glue guys that they could have brought back. Now, if they could have had Roach and Mark Mitchell with all these incoming freshmen,
right?
I mean, because then they can kind of teach them the Duke way and all that. Now, I mean, throwing in a bunch of transfers from outside of the program, even if they've played basketball before, with a bunch of freshmen who are trying to find their way. I mean, the chemistry around that is just going to be. It's going to be. I mean, maybe it'll all work, but chances are it doesn't.
What happened to the Power kid? Where did he sign? TJ Power?
I don't know. I don't. Where did Mark Mitchell go? Do you know?
Missouri, I believe.
Missouri, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where the Power kid went.
They had a redshirt kid just signed at Virginia Tech. Now, he didn't play last year, so I don't know much about him, but he obviously saw the writing on the wall, and he ended up going over to Virginia Tech. But the TJ Power kid, because we were on Power heavy for a long time, and you had made the joke of like, well, what if we get TJ Power? It's like, well, I don't know if that's going to happen, but let me see. I'm just going to pull up where TJ Power went. I liked his game. I really wanted him. He went to Virginia. TJ Power went to Virginia.
Hey, that's a great fit. That's a great fit for both of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for him.
Virginia desperately needs some offensive firepower. So yeah, that's an interesting signing.
Well, I love that he was like, you know what? I want to get the ball up. I'm going to Virginia because they need some people that can get the ball up. Yeah. So I'm going to be that guy. All right. Well, good for him. I'll be interested to watch him play. I'll be cheering for him.
Yeah. And by the way, we probably have not raved enough about the Cade Tyson signing on this show today. So shame on us. But like when you look at his shooting metrics, I mean, they're
metrics,
they're off the charts. I mean, he's a 60+% catch and shoot open 3-point shooter, which is basically the same thing RJ was last year. I mean, that's one. And then just overall, I think his advanced shooting metrics is he's one of the top 3 or 4 shooters in the country.
I saw somewhere was unguarded. He was the number 1.
I think that's
percentage shooter unguarded on shots further than 15 feet. Like they mixed in some mid-range stuff, but supposedly, and don't quote me on this, I did read somewhere where advanced analytics ranked him or his percentages were the number 1 in the country for unguarded shots post 15 feet.
Yeah, I mean, you think about all the open looks that we were able to generate last year for guys, both for Harrison and for Cormac. If those sorts of looks are going to him, I mean, I think he's going to shoot better than low 30s or whatever Cormac shot. And again, I'm not trying to dig at Cormac, but I think that could be a major difference for us next year. So we can't let the disappointment of some of these other ones overwhelm the fact that I think he is a huge addition to the team.
And I think he looked at that and was like, okay, I would love to get the looks that Cormac got. That's going to be me. So I had the conversation with a Duke fan, and they were kind of like, well, he played at Belmont last year. Like, let's see what he does in the ACC. And my argument is it's probably going to be easier for him because he's surrounded with people that are going to get so much attention that he's just going to float around and find looks. He's going to get 3 or 4 looks naked a game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where did Connect come from? I mean, all these guys, I mean, who are transferring up from and Belmont it plays at a higher level than Northern Colorado.
Yeah, they do for sure.
The Grant Nelson kid, sorry to bring up a sore point, but Carolina fans, but where did he come from? Like North Dakota State or something?
Yeah.
So I think the idea,
too, right? Him and Sears both can come back. I mean, Alabama's done some work. They're going to be tough if those guys come back.
Yeah, they could be loaded too. But anyway, I think there's a long history of guys who have transferred up and done quite well. And I think shooting translates. Like if you can shoot, you can shoot. I'm not saying there won't be some adjustment just for playing at Carolina and all that, but
he was a big sign. I'm glad you mentioned that. He was a big signing, and I think that we get 2 years with him. Hopefully now maybe he sets the world on fire and he becomes a draft pick and he's out. Who knows? But at least we know he's not worst case scenario one and done. Worst case scenario, we get him for 2 years if he doesn't become all world next year.
That's right. And his brother's a pro. I mean, so there's good genes there. I mean, I think we're going to look back, over the course of the year and be like, hey, that was massive for the makeup of the team and the ability to stretch the floor.
Yeah, he's a Charlotte kid, right? Isn't he from Charlotte?
Yeah, maybe. I knew he's from North Carolina, but I didn't know exactly where.
Yeah, I think he's because you're coming to us from Charlotte, and I believe that he's a Charlotte kid. Nope, Monroe, North Carolina. That's near Charlotte, though, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, man. Well, go Heels, and I'll see you in 3 weeks.
Sounds good.